Sing this Mozart aria, and I'll marry you." The words hung in the air like crystal about to shatter. Victoria Ashford said it with a laugh. Light, musical, cruel. Her voice carried across the marble entryway of the Ashford estate, where sunlight spilled through floor-to-ceiling windows and painted everything gold. Everything except him. Daniel Park stood frozen near the service entrance, a mop bucket in one hand, his mother's cleaning supplies weighing down the other. He wasn't supposed to be in this part of the house, not when guests were arriving, not when Victoria's engagement party was about to begin. But he'd heard the piano. Someone had been playing in the music room. Hesitant, stumbling notes that made him wince. He couldn't help himself. Music lived in his bones the way hunger lives in an empty stomach. Constant. Aching. Impossible to ignore. "Did you hear me?" Victoria turned toward him now, her silk dress catching light like water. 23 years old and carved from privilege. Her friends stood behind her, 3 girls in designer labels, holding champagne flutes like scepters. I said, "Sing the Queen of the Night aria, right now. If you can do it, I'll call off my engagement to Bradley and marry you instead." Her friends erupted in laughter. Daniel's grip tightened on the mop handle. He knew what he looked like to them. The help. The maid's son. 25 years old, and still living in the small apartment his mother rented on the edge of town, still cleaning houses to pay off her medical bills. "Victoria, leave him alone." The voice came from the doorway. Soft, embarrassed. Emma Chen, Victoria's former college roommate, stood with her arms crossed. She was the only one not laughing. "Oh, Emma, relax, I'm just having fun." Victoria stepped closer to Daniel, her heels clicking on the marble. "You were humming it earlier, weren't you? When you thought no one could hear? My mother said you used to take music classes before you dropped out." The words landed like stones. Yes. He'd taken classes. 3 semesters at community college before his mother got sick, before the hospital bills started arriving like tidal waves, before he learned that dreams were luxuries people like him couldn't afford. "I was just..." Daniel's voice came out rough. "The piano was out of tune. I was going to tell someone." "The piano is worth more than your mother makes in 5 years," Victoria said sweetly. "I don't think you need to worry about it." The air left his lungs. His mother. Maria Park. 52 years old with hands worn raw from bleach and hard work. The woman who'd sung him lullabies in a voice like honey, who'd worked 3 jobs to keep him fed, who'd told him once, before exhaustion stole the light from her eyes, that he had a gift. "That's enough." Emma stepped forward. "Victoria, this isn't funny." But Victoria was already turning away, already laughing with her friends, as they moved toward the drawing room where the party would begin. Over her shoulder, she called back, "If you ever do learn to sing it, Daniel, you let me know. I could use a good laugh." The door closed behind them. Daniel stood alone in the golden light, surrounded by wealth he'd never touch, holding a mop like a sword he didn't know how to use. His reflection stared back at him from the polished floor, small, bent, invisible. But inside his chest, something stirred. Not anger. Not yet. Something quieter. Something that felt like the first note of a song he'd forgotten he knew. Daniel didn't go home right away. He finished his shift in silence, mopping floors, emptying trash bins, wiping down surfaces that had never known a fingerprint. The Ashford estate sprawled across 12 acres of Connecticut countryside, all pristine lawns and old money. His mother had been cleaning here for 18 years. He'd been helping her for 7. The sun was setting when he finally pulled into the parking lot of Riverside Apartments. 3rd floor, Unit 12. The elevator was broken again. It was always broken. His mother was asleep on the couch when he came in, still wearing her work clothes. The TV played softly, some cooking show she'd never finish watching. Her breathing was shallow, uneven. The oxygen tank sat beside her like a sentinel. Chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD. The doctor said it came from years of cleaning chemicals, poor ventilation, air she'd breathed so other people's homes could shine. Daniel set down his keys without sound. Crossed to the kitchen. The medical bills were stacked on the counter. He'd organized them by due date, color-coded with sticky notes. Red for urgent, yellow for negotiable. The pile of red was growing. $63,000. That's what hope cost, apparently. He opened the refrigerator. Half a carton of eggs, bread, some leftover rice. He'd make it stretch. He always did. "Danny?" His mother's voice drifted from the couch, rough as gravel. "I'm here, Mom. Go back to sleep." "How was work?" "Fine." He didn't tell her about Victoria. Didn't mention the humiliation that still burned in his throat like acid. "Mrs. Ashford said you can take the week off. Paid." A lie, but a necessary one. His mother needed rest more than she needed pride. She coughed, a wet, rattling sound that made his chest tighten. "You're a good boy, Danny. You know that?" He closed his eyes. "I know, Mom." After she fell back asleep, Daniel climbed the stairs to the roof. It was his ritual, his escape, the one place in this suffocating world where he could breathe. The city stretched below him, Hartford's lights beginning to flicker on as darkness settled. He sat on the ledge, legs dangling over 3 stories of nothing, and pulled out his phone. The video was still there. The one he'd recorded 2 years ago before everything fell apart, before he'd dropped out, before the music died. He pressed play. His own voice filled the quiet. Younger, stronger, full of something he barely recognized now. He was singing Puccini. Nessun dorma, the aria that meant none shall sleep. He'd performed it at the community college showcase. Professor Hernandez had called it extraordinary, said he had the kind of voice that comes along once in a generation. 3 weeks later, his mother collapsed at work. Daniel closed the video, stared at the skyline. Victoria's words echoed in his mind. "Sing this Mozart and I'll marry you. The Queen of the Night aria, one of the most technically demanding pieces in all of opera. Impossible high notes, lightning-fast coloratura passages, a range that could shatter glass. Singers trained for years just to attempt it. Some never mastered it at all. And she'd said it like a joke, like he was the punchline. But here's what Victoria didn't know. Daniel had been studying that aria for months. Late nights after his mother fell asleep, headphones in, following along with recordings. Not because he thought he'd ever perform it, but because it reminded him of who he used to be, who he might have been. The wind picked up, cold against his face. He could walk away. Forget Victoria's cruelty. Keep his head down. Keep cleaning, keep surviving. Or he could do the impossible. His phone buzzed, a text from Emma Chen. "I'm sorry about today. Victoria was out of line. You okay?" Daniel stared at the message. Emma had always been kind. The only one in that circle who ever saw him as human. He typed back, "I'm fine. Thank you." Then he opened YouTube and searched for the Queen of the Night aria, downloaded the sheet music, found a practice track. The decision settled over him like armor. If they wanted to laugh at him, fine. But they were going to hear him sing first. The Hartford Community Arts Center smelled like old wood and possibility. Daniel found it on a Tuesday morning, tucked between a laundromat and a bodega on Marshall Street. The paint was peeling. The sign was faded. But through the window, he could see a piano, He pushed open the door. An older woman sat at the instrument, her fingers moving across the keys with the kind of grace that comes from a lifetime of practice. She was maybe 70, with silver hair pulled back and reading glasses perched on her nose. Sheet music surrounded her like fallen leaves. She stopped playing when she saw him. "We don't open until noon," she said, not unkindly. "I'm not here for a class." Daniel's voice caught. "I need a teacher." She studied him. Really looked. The kind of looking that sees past clothes and tired eyes into something deeper. "What's your name?" "Daniel Park." "Well, Daniel Park, I'm Margaret Foster. I teach voice here twice a week, but I'm not taking new students." She turned back to the piano. "Try the college. They have a program." I dropped out. The words tasted like failure. "I can't afford college. I can't afford you either, probably. But I can clean, I can organize, I can do whatever you need." Margaret's hands stilled on the keys. "What do you want to sing?" Daniel pulled out his phone, showed her the sheet music he'd downloaded, the Queen of the Night aria, Mozart's impossible masterpiece. Margaret's eyebrows rose. "That's not a beginner's piece." "I know. That's not even an intermediate piece. Professionals struggle with this." "I know." She closed the piano lid, stood, walked toward him with the careful assessment of a jeweler examining a stone. "Sing something, anything, right now." Daniel's throat went dry. Here, in this dusty room with paint-chipped walls, with no audience but this stranger. It felt more terrifying than Victoria's marble entryway. He closed his eyes, thought of his mother sleeping on the couch, thought of the medical bills, thought of Victoria's laughter. And he sang. Just a simple scale at first. Then a verse from Amazing Grace, his mother's favorite. His voice cracked on the high notes, stumbled on the breath control. But it was there. The raw material, the gift Professor Hernandez had seen. When he finished, silence filled the space between them. Margaret was crying. "You," she said quietly, "have been given something precious, and you've been letting it die." The truth of it hit him like a fist. "I'll teach you," she continued, "not for money, not for favors, because letting a voice like yours go to waste would be a crime against music itself." She pointed to a chair. "Sit down, we have work to do." The first week nearly broke him. Margaret was kind but merciless. She made him breathe, really breathe, using his diaphragm, his core, muscles he didn't know existed, made him hold notes until his vision blurred, made him repeat scales until the patterns carved themselves into his muscle memory. "Again," she'd say. "Always again." His throat burned. His body ached. He'd finish a session and go straight to his evening cleaning shift, then come home and collapse. But something was changing. The second week, she introduced the aria itself. Started with just the opening phrases. The melody was deceptively simple at first, but then it climbed and climbed. Into stratospheric registers where most male voices couldn't follow. "This was written for a soprano," Margaret explained. "A very specific kind of soprano. You're a tenor. You're going to have to do something extraordinary with your falsetto, your head voice, and your technique. Most men can't do this. Most don't even try." "I have to try," Daniel said. She nodded. "Then we build. Foundation first. No shortcuts." They worked on breath support, on resonance, on the way sound travels through the body like light through a prism. Margaret taught him to feel the music, not just sing it, to understand that every note carried weight, emotion, story. "Mozart wrote this for the Queen of the Night," she told him. "A mother who's lost her daughter? This isn't just technical showmanship. This is rage. This is grief. This is power. You have to find that inside yourself." Daniel thought about his own mother, the way her breathing struggled, the way she'd sacrificed everything. He found it. Week 3, he sang through the first section without stopping. Margaret stood from the piano, tears in her eyes again. That's it. That's the sound. But the second section, the famous impossible passage, remained out of reach. The rapid-fire coloratura runs, the stratospheric high F, the precision required to hit every note cleanly at that speed and altitude. He failed it 17 times. On the 18th, his voice cracked, and he punched the wall in frustration. His knuckles split. Blood dripped onto the floor. "Stop!" Margaret's voice cut through his spiral. "Sit down." He sat. She brought him ice for his hand. Then she sat beside him. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "The truth." Daniel stared at his bleeding knuckles. "Someone told me I couldn't. Someone laughed at me. Someone treated me like I was nothing. And you want to prove them wrong?" "Yes." Margaret nodded slowly. "Good, use that. But don't let it consume you. The best performances aren't born from anger. They're born from something deeper, from love, from necessity, from the need to say something the world needs to hear." She paused. "What do you need to say, Daniel?" He thought about his mother, about Professor Hernandez, about every hour he'd spent cleaning floors, invisible, forgotten. "That I existed," he whispered, "that I mattered, that I had something beautiful to give, even if no one wanted to receive it." Margaret squeezed his shoulder. "Then that's what you'll sing. Not for Victoria, for you." Week 4, something shifted. The notes that had seemed impossible began to feel inevitable. His body understood the music now. His voice had strengthened, expanded, learned to soar into registers he'd never touched before. The coloratura passage, those lightning-fast runs, began to flow. Not perfectly, not yet, but close. So close. "Again," Margaret said. And he sang it again, and again, and again, until the day came when he sang it through, start to finish, every impossible note landing like a prayer answered. Margaret stood from the piano, walked to him, placed both hands on his shoulders. "You're ready," she said. Daniel's heart hammered in his chest. 4 weeks, 28 days of bleeding, breaking, rebuilding. Ready for what? To show them who you are. He thought of Victoria, the engagement party, the marble floors and crystal laughter. Margaret seemed to read his mind. "Whatever you're planning, make sure it's worth it. Make sure when you open your mouth to sing, you're not just proving someone wrong. You're proving yourself right." Daniel nodded. That night, on the roof of his apartment building, he sang to the stars. The Queen of the Night aria. All of it, every impossible note. And the city listened. The Ashford Autumn Gala was the social event of the season. 200 guests, crystal chandeliers, a string quartet playing Vivaldi in the corner. The kind of evening where million-dollar deals were made over champagne and polite conversation. Daniel arrived through the service entrance, wearing his mother's borrowed car and a suit from Goodwill that almost fit. His hands shook as he signed in with security. Emma had helped him, sent him the details, told him Victoria would be announcing her engagement to Bradley Thornton III tonight, a merger of 2 banking families, as much business as romance. "She'll be insufferable," Emma had texted, "but if you're really going to do this, do it right. 7 p.m., during the toasts." Now, standing in the kitchen among catering staff who recognized him, Daniel felt the weight of impossibility settle back onto his shoulders. What was he thinking? These people didn't want to hear him sing. They wanted him invisible. They wanted him silent. "You can do this." The voice belonged to Margaret, who'd arrived separately, dressed elegantly, a guest invited through the Community Arts Foundation's donor list. She squeezed his arm. "I'll be in the audience. When you're ready, I'll give the signal to the quartet. They owe me a favor." Daniel nodded, unable to speak. At 7:15, the toasts began. Victoria stood at the center of the grand ballroom, radiant in a gown that cost more than his mother's yearly salary. Bradley beside her, handsome and hollow. Their families raised glasses. Speeches about legacy and future and tradition flowed like wine. Daniel stood at the edge of the room, his heart a war drum. Then Victoria's father finished his toast, and there was a pause, that breath before the applause. Margaret caught his eye from across the room, nodded. Daniel stepped forward. "Excuse me." His voice barely carried. No one heard. He tried again, louder. "Excuse me." The room turned. 200 faces, 200 pairs of eyes finding him. Recognition dawning. Confusion. Amusement. "Oh my God," Victoria laughed. "Daniel, what are you doing?" His throat closed. Every instinct screamed at him to run. But he thought of his mother, of Margaret, of the 4 weeks of bleeding knuckles and broken pride rebuilt into something stronger. "You made me a promise," he said. His voice steadied. "You said if I could sing the Mozart aria, you'd marry me." The room erupted in laughter. Victoria's face flushed with anger and embarrassment. "That was a joke. Security." "Let him finish." Emma's voice cut through the noise. She stood near the front, arms crossed. "You said it. Let him try." Victoria's eyes flashed, but she was trapped. To refuse now in front of everyone would make her look cruel, and the Ashfords prided themselves on their charity, their grace. "Fine." Victoria's smile was poison. "Sing. Let's all hear what the Maid's son can do." Margaret moved to the piano. The quartet stepped aside. The room fell silent, the heavy anticipatory silence before a car crash. Daniel walked to the center of the floor. The chandelier light caught him. Suddenly, he was exposed. Small. The Goodwill suit too big in the shoulders. His shoes scuffed. Everything about him wrong for this room. He closed his eyes, found his breath, and began. The opening notes of the Queen of the Night aria filled the ballroom, and immediately he faltered. His voice cracked. The first phrase came out thin, uncertain. Scattered laughter rippled through the crowd. Victoria smirked. Bradley whispered something to his father. Daniel's hands trembled. This was a mistake, a horrible, humiliating mistake. But then, he thought of his mother's voice singing him to sleep, of Margaret's hands on his shoulders, of every person who'd ever told him to stay small, stay quiet, stay invisible. And something ignited. He opened his eyes, found his center, and sang, really sang. His voice soared into the stratospheric register, pure, powerful, impossibly high. The coloratura passages flowed like water, each note crystalline and precise. The emotion poured through him, rage and grief and triumph all woven into Mozart's genius. The laughter died. The room stilled. People stopped breathing. Some stories end with a voice that was silent learning to sing, with invisible people becoming seen, with the small becoming mighty, not through cruelty repaid, but through beauty shared. Because in the end, the greatest act of defiance isn't proving someone wrong. It's proving yourself right. And Daniel Park, the maid's son, the dropout, the boy who cleaned floors, had done exactly that. Not for Victoria, for himself, and for everyone who'd ever been told they couldn't. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to stay silent. What dreams have you been told are impossible? What voice inside you is waiting to be heard? The world needs your song, too. Some stories end with a voice that was silent learning to sing, with invisible people becoming seen, with the small becoming mighty, not through cruelty repaid, but through beauty shared. Because in the end, the greatest act of defiance isn't proving someone wrong, it's proving yourself right. And Daniel Park, the maid's son, the dropout, the boy who cleaned floors, had done exactly that. Not for Victoria, for himself, and for everyone who'd ever been told they couldn't. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to stay silent. What dreams have you been told are impossible? What voice inside you is waiting to be heard? The world needs your song, too.